First contact. The unusual welcome. The U.S. horizon floated above the beautiful planet of Zifar 7. The planet was covered in lush green forests, sparkling blue rivers, and massive golden cities that shimmered under twin suns. For the first time in history, humans were making peaceful contact with the Sci-Fi, an advanced alien species that had invited them to their homeworld. Captain Ryan Carter stood on the bridge, staring at the view. He was a strong, calm leader, but today, his heart beat a little faster. First contact was always delicate. One wrong move could turn peace into disaster. "Landing team, report to the shuttle bay," Carter ordered. His voice was steady, but inside he was wondering. What if something goes wrong? What if we offend them? Beside him, Dr. Evelyn Grant, the team's cultural expert, adjusted her glasses. "Captain, Sci-Fi customs are very different from ours. We must be respectful and careful." Carter nodded. "That's the plan, Doc. No surprises." But he had no idea what kind of surprise was waiting for them. The landing. The shuttle glided smoothly down to the planet's surface, landing in the center of a grand courtyard. Tall, elegant buildings surrounded them, their golden rooftops reflecting the sunlight. Strange but beautiful music played in the air. Thousands of Sci-Fi citizens gathered to watch the humans arrive. A group of Sci-Fi leaders stepped forward to greet them. They were tall, slender beings with shimmering blue skin, golden eyes, and long, flowing robes. They looked graceful, wise, and completely serious. Captain Carter stepped forward, placing his hand over his chest, the universal human greeting of peace. "We come in peace," he said with a respectful nod. The Sci-Fi leader, a woman named High Priestess Velia, stepped closer. She was tall and elegant, with glowing patterns across her skin. She smiled gently, but then something shocking happened. She lifted her dress and spread it open. Carter froze. His team gasped. Someone coughed loudly. A few tried not to laugh. Priestess Velia and the other Sci-Fi women stood proudly, their garments raised, looking completely serious. Dr. Grant's face turned pale. "Oh, no." Carter, still in shock, whispered, "Tell me this is normal." Dr. Grant swallowed hard. I think it is. It's a traditional greeting." One of the younger officers, Lieutenant Harris, muttered, "We are so dead." The cultural misunderstanding. The Sci-Fi waited for a response. They seemed confused by the human silence. The moment stretched too long. Finally, Priestess Velia spoke. "Do humans not respect us? You do not return the greeting." Carter blinked. Return they? He stopped himself. No way was he lifting his uniform. Dr. Grant quickly stepped in, speaking carefully. "Great Priestess, please forgive us. We did not expect such an honorable tradition." Velia tilted her head. "You did not study our ways." Dr. Grant forced a smile. "We did, but we must understand better. Could you explain this greeting?" The priestess nodded proudly. "In ancient times, our warriors would greet one another by revealing the sacred markings on their bodies. It showed they carried no weapons, only truth. It is a sign of respect, trust, and friendship." Carter let out a slow breath. Okay, this was not what they thought. It wasn't weird, it was just cultural. Still, it was the most awkward first contact in human history. The team tries not to laugh. Lieutenant Harris, trying to hold back laughter, whispered, "Captain, should we? I mean, do we?" Carter shot him a warning look. "Don't even think about it." The Sci-Fi noticed the human's hesitation. The priestess narrowed her eyes. Do humans fear showing their honor? The humans looked at each other. What were they supposed to do? Dr. Grant tried to save the situation. Humans have a different way of showing respect," she said quickly. "We place our hand over our chest. It is a sign of truth and peace." Velia looked thoughtful. A strange way, but perhaps acceptable. Carter immediately put his hand over his chest again, and his entire team copied him. The Sci-Fi watched closely. Finally, the priestess smiled. A new form of respect. Unusual, but interesting. Carter exhaled in relief. Crisis avoided. Or so he thought. The problem isn't over. As they walked toward the Grand Palace for the welcome feast, Carter leaned toward Dr. Grant. Okay, new rule. No sudden movements. No surprises. And definitely no misunderstandings. Dr. Grant nodded, but she looked worried. Captain, the Sci-Fi might think we're refusing their culture. That could be seen as an insult. Carter frowned. So what do we do? Dr. Grant sighed. We need to find a way to show them we respect their traditions, without causing an intergalactic incident. Carter felt a headache coming on. This mission just got a lot harder. But the trouble wasn't over yet, because inside the palace, a new challenge was waiting. And it was about to get a lot more awkward. Trying to stay professional, Captain Ryan Carter had faced a lot in his career. Rogue AI, asteroid storms, even an alien pirate attack once. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared him for a diplomatic crisis involving an unexpected fashion statement. As they walked into the Grand Sci-Fi Palace, his team was still struggling to keep straight faces. The towering golden walls gleamed in the twin sunlight, and the marble floor beneath their feet shimmered with some kind of bioluminescent energy. But Carter barely noticed. His mind was still stuck on what had just happened outside. The Sci-Fi women had greeted them in the most unexpected way possible, and now his team was left balancing between diplomacy and a barely contained laughing fit. The struggle to stay serious. Dr. Evelyn Grant, their cultural expert, walked beside him, muttering under her breath. Captain, I know this is strange, but please, we have to respect their customs. I am respecting it, Carter replied in a tight voice. I'm just processing it. Behind them, Lieutenant Harris, the young weapons officer, was practically shaking from trying to hold back laughter. Ensign Patel, their communications expert, was biting her lip so hard it looked painful. Even the usually serious Commander Douglas had a twitch in his cheek. Stop, Carter hissed at them. Captain, with all due respect, Harris whispered back, this is the weirdest first contact in history. No arguments there, Carter muttered. They stepped into a massive banquet hall, filled with Sci-Fi nobles. Long tables stretched out in front of them, piled high with colorful food, some dishes glowing softly, others steaming like they were freshly pulled from a volcano. And yet, Carter had no appetite, because right at the front of the hall, Priestess Velia and a row of Sci-Fi dignitaries stood up. And in perfect unison, they lifted their garments again. An increasingly awkward situation. Carter froze mid-step. He saw Harris slap a hand over his own mouth to stop from laughing. Patel was practically shaking, and Douglas had to look away to maintain composure. Dr. Grant exhaled sharply before quickly stepping forward. Ah, great priestess. What a, beautiful tradition. Priestess Velia nodded approvingly. I am pleased you accept it. It is how we share trust. The Sci-Fi all stared expectantly at the humans. Carter felt a bead of sweat roll down his forehead. The Sci-Fi were waiting. Expecting. Oh no. They still thought the humans were supposed to return the gesture. Desperate attempts at diplomacy. Dr. Grant, realizing the crisis, spoke quickly. Ah. As we mentioned before, humans have a different way of showing respect. Priestess Velia looked intrigued. Yes, the hand-to-chest gesture. It is curious. Carter immediately placed his hand over his chest, his team following suit. The Sci-Fi studied them carefully. Finally, Velia gave a slow nod. It is not our way, but perhaps there is wisdom in it. Carter exhaled in relief. Disaster averted. Or so he thought. The banquet of suspicion. They sat down at the long table, surrounded by Sci-Fi nobles. The air smelled of exotic spices and rich alien fruits, but Carter was too focused on making sure nothing else went wrong. As food was served, Priestess Velia watched them closely. Her golden eyes studied every movement, every expression. She wasn't just a leader. She was testing them. Carter had a bad feeling. Something wasn't right. Finally, Velia spoke. "Your hesitation disturbs me, Captain Carter." He stiffened. Hesitation. Velia's gaze was sharp. "You do not follow our greeting customs, yet you claim to respect us." Carter set down his drink slowly. "Our cultures are different, but that does not mean we do not value yours." Velia leaned forward. "Then why do you fear? Why do you hold back? Trust is given through openness. If you do not trust us, why should we trust you?" The room went silent. Carter knew this was dangerous territory. The Sci-Fi were not just offended anymore. They were doubting humanity itself. The challenge is given. The tension in the room thickened. The Sci-Fi nobles whispered among themselves. Carter could feel the weight of their stares. Then Velia stood up. "If you will not prove your trust through our ways, then you must prove it another way," she declared. Carter's stomach sank. He did not like where this was going. Velia turned to one of the guards. "Prepare the trial of truth." A low murmur spread through the Sci-Fi. Some looked excited, others curious. Carter was officially concerned. Dr. Grant's face had turned pale. "Oh no." Carter sighed. "Okay, what is the trial of truth?" Grant swallowed. "According to Sci-Fi history, it's a test of a person's deepest fears." Carter blinked. "I'm sorry, did you say fears?" "Yes, Captain." Carter ran a hand down his face. "Of course, because today wasn't crazy enough already." Velia gestured toward a large ceremonial door at the far end of the hall. "If humans wish to prove their honor, then you must enter the Hall of Visions and face the trial." Carter glanced at his team. Harris shook his head. "Captain, this feels like a really bad idea." Patel muttered, "I didn't sign up for an alien fear chamber." Carter sighed. Neither did he. But they had no choice. If they refused, the Sci-Fi would never trust humanity. And so, with no other option, Carter stood up. "All right," he said, keeping his voice calm. "We accept the challenge." Velia's golden eyes glowed with approval. "Then let us begin," she said. The large ceremonial doors opened with a deep, ominous groan. Beyond them, a dark mist swirled, strange whispers echoing in the air. The trial of truth had begun, and humanity was about to face its worst nightmares. The diplomatic disaster. The great ceremonial doors of the Hall of Visions groaned open, revealing an eerie darkness. Strange whispers drifted out, slithering through the air like invisible serpents. The Sci-Fi nobles watched with quiet fascination, their golden eyes reflecting the shifting glow of the chamber beyond. Captain Ryan Carter took a slow breath. He had dealt with alien politics before, but this, walking into a nightmare simulation to prove humanity's honor, this was a new one. Beside him, Dr. Evelyn Grant adjusted her wrist scanner, her fingers trembling slightly. "Captain, I strongly advise against this. We don't even know how this thing works." Lieutenant Harris, always the team's voice of sarcasm, muttered, "I already regret stepping off the ship today." Carter smirked. "You and me both." The Sci-Fi High Priestess, Velia, raised her hand, silencing the murmurs of the nobles. She stepped forward gracefully, her shimmering robes flowing behind her. "Humans have chosen the path of truth," she declared, her voice rich with power. "You will now step into the Hall of Visions, where your deepest truths will be revealed." Carter squared his shoulders. "And what exactly does that mean?" Velia tilted her head. "The chamber will reach into your soul and show you the fear you try to bury. If you are honest, you will pass. If you are weak, you will fall." Weak? Carter didn't like that word. He glanced at his team. No way were they backing down now. "Let's get this over with," he said. Velia gestured toward the chamber. "Enter." And so, with no other choice, humanity walked into the unknown. Inside the Hall of Visions, the moment Carter stepped inside, The temperature dropped. The world around him melted away. Gone was the golden palace. Gone were the Sci-Fi. Gone was his team. He was standing on Earth, or what was left of it. The sky burned red, choked with thick black smoke. The ground was cracked, filled with rivers of molten lava. Giant warships, not human, loomed overhead, firing plasma beams down onto ruined cities. Skyscrapers crumbled like sandcastles. And then he heard it. Screams. Human screams. Carter turned, and his blood ran cold. There among the ruins were his people, his crew, his friends, all of humanity, broken and enslaved. A Sci-Fi-like figure, taller, darker, monstrous, stood above the wreckage, staring straight at him. "You failed," the figure whispered. "You let them down." Carter's fists clenched. No, this wasn't real. He wasn't going to let fear control him. Taking a deep breath, he planted his feet and said, "This isn't the future." A shadowy figure tilted its head. "But it could be." Carter shook his head. "No, because we fight. Because we adapt. Because we don't stop." His voice grew stronger. "Humanity doesn't fall." The vision shattered around him like broken glass. And suddenly, he was back. The others faced their fears. Carter stumbled out of the chamber, panting. The Sci-Fi nobles watched in silence, intrigued. One by one, the rest of his team emerged. Dr. Grant walked out next, her hands shaking. Her face was pale, and she whispered, I saw Earth turn into an uninhabitable wasteland. I saw humanity wiped out by our own mistakes." Harris came out next, his usually cocky expression gone. His voice was quiet. "I was alone, completely alone. I called out, but no one was left." Then Patel, who had clearly been crying. "I couldn't remember my name. I didn't exist. I was just gone." They had all seen something different, but they had all survived it. Priestess Velia stepped forward, her golden eyes full of curiosity. "And yet, you did not break." Carter, still catching his breath, met her gaze. "We don't break. It's not in our nature." The Sci-Fi's real test. Velia studied them carefully. "You faced your greatest fears, yet you endured." Fascinating. Then, for the first time, her expression softened. "You have passed the trial of truth." There was a collective sigh of relief from the humans. But then, Velia laughed. It wasn't a mocking laugh. It was amused, pleased. "You truly are strange creatures," she said, shaking her head. "Most Sci-Fi cannot withstand the trial for long. Many fall into madness, yet you humans walked in and emerged stronger." Carter frowned. "Wait, you were expecting us to fail." Velia's smile was mysterious. "Not fail. But I wish to understand you. And now, I do." Carter folded his arms. "And what did you learn?" Velia's golden eyes gleamed. "That humans do not fear as we do. You use fear as fuel. You do not run from it. You face it." She turned to the nobles and raised her voice. "Today, we have seen something rare. Humanity is worthy of our alliance." There was a murmur of agreement from the Sci-Fi. Some of them even nodded in respect. And just like that, the crisis was over. Or, almost. The final, unexpected surprise. As the feast resumed, Carter and his team finally began to relax. The Sci-Fi now looked at them differently. With curiosity, yes, but also with respect. Carter leaned toward Dr. Grant. "Well, that was a nightmare, but at least we passed." Dr. Grant smirked. "See, Captain, diplomacy isn't always about speeches. Sometimes it's about walking into alien fear chambers." Carter chuckled. "Yeah, next time, let's just stick to handshakes." But just as he took a sip of his drink, a Sci-Fi noblewoman approached him. She smiled warmly then. She lifted her dress. Carter choked on his drink. Dr. Grant burst out laughing. The noblewoman giggled. You still find this amusing, Captain? Carter sighed, rubbing his forehead. We are never living this down. Across the room, the Sci-Fi laughed, amused by human reactions. And just like that, the weirdest first contact in human history was now also the funniest. The unintended challenge. Captain Ryan Carter sat at the long banquet table, forcing himself to focus on the strange, glowing food in front of him. The Sci-Fi High Priestess, Velia, had declared humanity worthy of an alliance, but somehow Carter couldn't shake the feeling that their problems weren't over yet. Not when a Sci-Fi noblewoman had just playfully lifted her dress at him again. Dr. Evelyn Grant was still trying not to laugh. Lieutenant Harris, on the other hand, was making things worse by whispering, Captain, I think she likes you. Carter shot him a glare. Not another word. But across the table, Velia was still watching him. She rested her hands on the table, her golden eyes thoughtful. Your species is intriguing, Captain Carter. Carter set down his drink cautiously. He did not like the tone of that. Thank you. Velia leaned forward. You passed the trial of truth far too easily. It was not what I expected. Carter frowned. Expected? She nodded. We Sci-Fi have faced that trial for centuries, and many of our people break under its weight. Even the strongest leaders have fallen into despair. Carter sighed. Well, humanity has had a rough history. Fear is nothing new to us. Velia's eyes sparkled with curiosity. And yet, you do not collapse under it. You do not flee from it. This is fascinating. Carter wasn't sure if that was a good thing. Then Velia smiled. And that's when he knew something bad was coming. The Sci-Fi want more. You see, Velia continued, the trial of truth was merely a test of the mind. Carter's stomach dropped. Merely. Velia stood up, lifting her arms in a grand gesture. Now, we shall test your spirit. Carter's entire team froze. Harris groaned. You have got to be kidding me. Dr. Grant pinched the bridge of her nose. Of course, there's another test. Of course there is. Velia looked amused at their reactions. It is only fair. If we are to form an alliance, we must know everything about our potential allies. Carter leaned forward slowly. And how exactly do you plan to test us this time? Velia's smile widened. With the gauntlet of honor. Carter swore under his breath. Why did aliens always have to make things difficult? What is the gauntlet of honor? The banquet hall erupted in excitement. Sci-Fi nobles whispered among themselves, glancing at the humans with interest. Even the guards looked eager. Carter immediately knew two things. This was not optional. This was probably going to hurt. Velia raised her hands for silence. The Gauntlet of Honor is an ancient trial, a series of physical and strategic challenges that test one's strength, endurance, and wisdom. Carter frowned. Wait, strength? Endurance? You do realize that we're not built like Sci-Fi, right? One of the Sci-Fi nobles chuckled. Then it will be even more interesting. Carter ran a hand down his face. Of course, it would be. Velia gestured to a pair of massive stone doors at the far end of the hall. They rumbled open, revealing a massive arena beyond. The crowd cheered as towering pillars of stone rose from the floor, platforms shifting into place. Carter groaned. I really hate diplomacy. Dr. Grant sighed. We're going to die. Harris grinned. Nah, we'll be fine. Probably. Carter glared at him. That is not helpful. The first trial. The path of strength. The humans were led into the massive arena. The structure was breathtaking. Glowing vines wrapped around towering stone pillars, strange floating platforms hovered in midair, and energy barriers flickered along the walls. In the center of the arena, a massive stone block sat on the ground. It looked like it weighed a ton. A Sci-Fi warrior stepped forward. He was twice Carter's size, with deep blue skin and glowing tribal tattoos running across his arms. Velia turned to Carter. This is Commander Draxer, one of our strongest warriors. If humans wish to prove themselves, you must face him. in a test of strength. Harris immediately blurted, "Oh, we are so dead." Carter ignored him and stepped forward. "How does this work?" he asked. Draxler cracked his knuckles. "Simple. You must lift this stone of honor and hold it for as long as possible." Carter stared at the gigantic rock. Harris whispered, "Captain, that thing looks like it weighs more than our ship." Patel muttered, "Maybe we should just pretend to faint." Carter ignored them. He had no choice but to at least try. The Sci-Fi warrior went first. With an effortless motion, Draxler lifted the stone over his head, holding it like it weighed nothing. The crowd cheered. Then it was Carter's turn. He stepped forward, placing his hands on the cool surface of the massive rock. And he pushed. Nothing. Carter gritted his teeth. "Come on, move." He dug his feet into the ground, engaging every muscle in his body. The stone shifted slightly. The crowd gasped. Carter felt his muscles scream in protest. His arms burned, his shoulders ached, but he wasn't giving up. Not when the entire fate of this alliance depended on it. With a final roar of effort, he lifted the stone off the ground. The arena erupted in cheers. Even Draxler looked impressed. Carter dropped the rock with a heavy thud and immediately collapsed onto his knees, panting. Harris clapped. "I can't believe that actually worked." Dr. Grant smirked. "Diplomacy through weightlifting. Who knew?" Velia laughed. "Your strength is unconventional, but admirable." Carter wiped the sweat from his forehead. "Great. What's next?" Velia grinned. "The trial of speed." Carter groaned. "Of course it is. The trial of truth." Captain Ryan Carter wiped the sweat from his forehead as the cheers from the Sci-Fi crowd echoed through the arena. His arms still ached from lifting the massive stone of honor, and his legs felt like jelly. Yet, standing across from him, Commander Draxler, the giant Sci-Fi warrior, barely looked winded. Carter turned to Dr. Evelyn Grant, still panting. "How the hell do they make these tests harder after that?" Dr. Grant shrugged. "Apparently, strength wasn't enough. Now we need speed." Carter groaned. "Because that's exactly what I need after almost breaking my back." High Priestess Velia, standing above them on the ceremonial platform, raised her voice. "You have passed the trial of strength, Captain Carter. But now, let us see if humans can match us in the trial of speed." Carter really wanted to sit down. Instead, he found himself being ushered to another section of the arena. The Sci-Fi cheered loudly as massive floating rings appeared in the air, suspended by energy fields. The rings formed an obstacle course, stretching far into the sky, disappearing behind towering rock formations. Below, there was a deep chasm with a river of glowing blue water rushing through it. Dr. Grant paled. "Please tell me we're not doing what I think we're doing." Lieutenant Harris, who was watching from the sidelines, let out a low whistle. "Oh, this is gonna be hilarious." Carter ignored him and turned to Velia. "Let me guess. You want me to run through this?" Velia nodded. "Not just run. You must leap from ring to ring. It is how Sci-Fi warriors train their agility." Carter glanced at the floating rings. They were barely wide enough for a person to stand on, and some of them moved erratically in midair. Carter sighed. "You guys just love making things impossible, don't you?" Velia smiled. "Shall we begin?" Of course, there was no backing out. The leap of faith. Carter stepped forward and looked at the first floating ring. It was about 10 feet away. Not impossible. Carter took a deep breath, crouched down, and jumped. His feet barely landed on the ring, and it tilted dangerously to one side. The crowd gasped. "Whoa!" Carter flailed his arms, barely keeping his balance. He took a step forward, hopping onto the next ring, which immediately dropped several feet. Carter's stomach lurched as the wind rushed past him. "Oh, come on." From the sidelines, Harris was laughing way too hard. Patil called out, "Captain, you might want to." Carter turned, just in time to see the next ring move away from him. "Oh, 4." He lunged for it, barely grabbing the edge. His legs dangled over the glowing river far below. Above him, Draxer smirked. Perhaps you need assistance. Carter gritted his teeth. I got this. With a grunt, he swung himself up, landing on the ring just before it rotated again. The crowd cheered. Velia raised an eyebrow. Impressive, but you are not finished yet. Carter groaned. Of course I'm not. The next set of rings started moving faster. Carter cursed under his breath. He had no choice but to go for it. The Sci-Fi bet against him. As Carter leaped through the course, Sci-Fi nobles in the stands started making bets. Some thought he would fail within the next 5 jumps. Others argued the humans were too stubborn to lose. Harris, hearing this, grinned and turned to one of the Sci-Fi warriors. All right, I'll put 20 credits on the captain actually surviving this. The warrior, intrigued, crossed his arms. You are confident in your leader. Harris smirked. Oh yeah. He might complain the whole time, but trust me, he's not going down. Meanwhile, Carter was struggling to survive. The final stretch had moving rings, spinning faster than before. Carter timed his next jump, then launched himself forward. For a moment, he was airborne. Then, he landed. Barely. The crowd erupted in cheers. Velia smiled. You have completed the trial of speed. Carter collapsed onto his back, panting. Harris fist-pumped the air. That's my captain. Patil turned to him. Wait, did you just bet on our commanding officer? Harris grinned. Don't worry, I bet on him winning. Carter glared at him. I hate you. The final trial. The mind's gambit. Just when Carter thought he was done, Velia stepped forward again. There is one final challenge, she announced. Carter sat up, exhausted. Lady, if this involves fighting a giant monster, I swear. Velia chuckled. No. The final test is not of body, but of mind. Carter frowned. What does that mean? Velia gestured, and 2 Sci-Fi servants brought forward a large ornate board. On it were glowing pieces, shifting and changing shape every few seconds. Dr. Grant's eyes widened. Captain, I think this is a game of strategic warfare. Carter frowned. You mean like chess? Velia nodded. Your species has wars, yes. This game will test how well you can think ahead and predict an enemy's moves. Carter sighed. Great. First, they made him lift a boulder. Then they made him jump through the air like a damned circus act. And now he had to outthink an alien general. Harris clapped his hands. Oh, this is gonna be fun to watch. Carter turned to him. You are enjoying this way too much. Harris grinned. Hey, I already won my bet. Carter groaned and sat down at the game board. Across from him, Commander Draxer took the opposite seat. The Sci-Fi warrior cracked his knuckles and smirked. I will go easy on you, human. Carter narrowed his eyes. Oh, you really shouldn't have said that. The game began. An unexpected compromise. Captain Ryan Carter sat across from Commander Draxer, staring at the glowing warboard between them. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. The game pieces were constantly shifting, their shapes morphing as the game progressed. Some pulsed with energy, while others flickered in and out of existence. The Sci-Fi called it the mind's gambit, a game of strategy, deception, and foresight. And Carter? Carter was terrible at board games. Lieutenant Harris, standing behind him, whispered, Captain, do you even know what you're doing? Carter muttered back, Absolutely not. Commander Draxer smirked. The rules are simple, human. Control the battlefield, protect your strongholds, and destroy your enemy's forces. Carter nodded slowly, pretending to understand. Right. Sounds easy. Dr. Evelyn Grant winced. Captain, Sci-Fi generals train with this game since childhood. It's basically how they prepare for war. Carter sighed. Of course it is. Draxer tapped the board, and a holographic battlefield unfolded before them. Glowing orbs hovered above, displaying shifting battle formations, reinforcement routes, and territory control zones. Carter blinked. "Oh, I hate this already." Villia smiled from her ceremonial seat. The final trial begins. The crowd fell silent. And then the game was on. The battle of wits. Draxer made his first move, swift and precise. A series of glowing blue forces surged across the board, claiming territory and reinforcing defensive positions. It was aggressive, but controlled. Carter rubbed his chin, thinking. Then he moved a piece randomly. Dr. Grant's eyes widened. "Captain, what are you doing?" Carter whispered, "I have no idea." Harris snorted. "Oh, this is gonna be great." Draxer studied the board and let out a deep chuckle. "A bold move, Captain Carter." Carter squinted. "Is it?" The crowd murmured as Draxer countered, launching a flanking attack that cut off Carter's entire left side. Carter cursed. "Okay, that was a bad move." Patel muttered, "You don't say." Carter straightened his back. "All right. New plan." Draxer smirked. "Do you have one?" Carter sighed. "Not yet, but I'm working on it." The human instinct. Carter started making unpredictable moves, not because he was brilliant, but because he had no idea what he was doing. And that confused Draxer. The Sci-Fi general hesitated. He had spent years studying war tactics, but Carter wasn't following any recognizable pattern. Was this a trap? Carter leaned toward Harris and whispered, "I think I just invented idiot warfare." Harris grinned. "And it's working." Draxer narrowed his eyes, studying Carter's formations. "Your strategy, it is chaotic, illogical." Carter smirked. "You say that like it's a bad thing." Draxer hesitated. For the first time, he was unsure. And that's when Carter struck. He made a reckless move, sending his forces into a full frontal attack. The Sci-Fi nobles gasped. Draxer's eyes widened. He had miscalculated. Carter grinned. "Checkmate." The war board flashed red. A moment of silence. Then, the arena erupted into cheers. Villia smiled. "Captain Carter, you have won." Carter blinked. "Wait, seriously." Dr. Grant clapped her hands together. "Captain, I think you just bluffed your way into history." Carter leaned back in his chair, absolutely exhausted. "That's great. Someone get me a drink." Draxer, to his credit, simply chuckled. "You are unpredictable, human. A dangerous quality." Carter smirked. "Yeah, we get that a lot." The new greeting. With all 3 trials completed, the Sci-Fi officially recognized humanity as worthy allies. And yet, one final issue remained. The greeting. The Sci-Fi still believed in their traditional method of lifting their garments to show respect. But humans, yeah, that wasn't going to happen. Carter stood before the High Priestess, choosing his words carefully. "Priestess Velia, we deeply respect your traditions, but we also have our own." Velia nodded. "Indeed, and how would you propose we merge them?" Carter thought for a moment. Then he had an idea. Instead of the garment-lifting tradition, Carter placed his right hand over his chest, the traditional human greeting. Velia observed the gesture. Then, instead of lifting her dress, she revealed her wrist, where an ancient Sci-Fi symbol of truth was marked. A moment of silence. Then, Velia smiled, a fitting compromise. She extended her wrist forward. Carter pressed his hand over his chest in return. And just like that, a new intergalactic tradition was born. The Sci-Fi cheered. The humans sighed in relief. And Carter, he turned to Dr. Grant and muttered, "If I ever have to negotiate an alien handshake again, I quit." Dr. Grant laughed. "Captain, I think you just saved both our cultures from eternal awkwardness." Harris grinned. "But we're still making memes about this, right?" Carter sighed. "Absolutely." The aftermath. As the humans prepared to leave, Word of the Great Dress Incident had already spread across the galaxy. Memes were being made. Someone had painted an artwork of Carter's reaction to the Sci-Fi greeting. An entire Sci-Fi dance routine was now being developed based on Carter's panicked face. And Harris was already selling t-shirts that said, "I survived the first Sion and take the greeting." Carter rubbed his forehead. "We are never living this down." Dr. Grant patted his shoulder. "At least we made history." Carter sighed. "Yeah, the weirdest history ever." As the ship prepared for takeoff, Carter looked out at the Sci-Fi homeworld one last time. Despite the chaos, the awkwardness, and the sheer insanity of this mission, humanity had made new allies. And most importantly, no one had to take their clothes off. The final twist and last laugh. The U.S. horizon hovered above Zephyr 7, preparing for departure. The mission, as insane as it had been, was finally over. Captain Ryan Carter stood on the bridge, watching the alien planet shrink below. Behind him, Dr. Evelyn Grant, Lieutenant Harris, and Ensign Patel were still talking about everything that had happened. "I can't believe we actually survived that," Patel muttered, shaking her head. "Oh, we didn't just survive." Harris grinned, holding up his tablet. "We became galactic legends." Carter sighed. "Dare I ask what's happening now?" Harris spun the screen around, showing the Zephyr news channel. The headline read, "Humanity, the species that TPASSEDVE impossible TRILs, and STILBLUSHED at a greeting." Dr. Grant covered her mouth, laughing. "Oh no." Patel scrolled further. "Oh, it gets worse. Memes have already spread across 3 star systems." Carter groaned. "Of course, they have." Harris smirked. "My personal favorite." He tapped on an image, a painting of Carter's horrified face from when the Sci-Fi women lifted their dresses, now immortalized as a piece of historical artwork. Underneath it, a caption read, "The moment humanity again you they mini SED up." Patel snorted. "Captain, I think they're naming a festival after you." Carter buried his face in his hands. "I hate everything." Harris grinned. "On the bright side, we're not at war." Dr. Grant smirked. "No, but we're going to be galactic stand-up comedy for years." Carter groaned again. "I swear, if I ever meet another Zephyr again, I—" Before he could finish, the communications console beeped. A message from Priestess Velia. Carter blinked. "Oh, come on." The special gift from Zephyr 7. With a deep sigh, Carter pressed the holo display, and Velia's image appeared. She looked amused. "Captain Carter," she greeted, "I see that your people have been enjoying the aftermath of our meeting." Carter forced a smile. "Yes, enjoying is exactly the word I'd use." Harris coughed, whispering, "He's lying." Carter kicked his chair back at him. Velia chuckled. "As a token of goodwill, the Sci-Fi people have prepared a gift for your species." Carter hesitated. "Gift?" Velia nodded. "We have decided to honor your unique contribution to our culture by creating a new customary performance." Carter's stomach dropped. Wait. What?" Velia clapped her hands. Behind her, a row of Sci-Fi dancers appeared, dressed in long, flowing robes. Music began playing. And then, they lifted their dresses, but only slightly, in perfect synchronization, revealing their wrists instead. Carter blinked. Patel gasped. Did they turn this into a cultural dance? Dr. Grant was losing it. "Oh my God, we changed their greeting into an actual performance." Harris was wheezing. "Captain, congratulations. You just invented the Zephyr wrist lift ceremony." Velia smiled warmly. "From this day forward, this is how we will greet human visitors." Carter had no words. The Sci-Fi dancers finished their performance, bowed, and the entire Sci-Fi council applauded. Carter rubbed his forehead. I need a drink. The galaxy reacts. As the U.S. Horizon left Zephyr 7, news of the first contact mission spread faster than light. Galactic social networks exploded with discussions, memes, and endless debates. Some civilizations mocked the humans. Some found it endearing. And some started adopting the Sci-Fi's new greeting. The next day, Carter received a transmission from another alien ambassador. A reptilian diplomat from the Farkith Empire appeared on the screen, looking serious. "Captain Carter," he greeted, "we have studied your interaction with the Sci-Fi and have decided that, as a sign of peace, we will also adopt your custom." Carter frowned. "Wait, what?" And then, the massive lizard-like alien lifted his arm and dramatically exposed his wrist. Carter slammed his head onto the table. Harris burst out laughing. "Captain, you just started a galactic theory and—" Carter lifted his head, his soul leaving his body. "I need a vacation." Epilogue. The Legend of Captain Carter. As the years passed, Captain Carter's first contact mission with the Sci-Fi became the stuff of galactic legend. The wrist lift ceremony spread to multiple star systems. The event became known as the Great Dress Incident of First Contact. Carter's face was printed on commemorative coins. A play was written about it. A musical. A holodrama series. And back on Earth, someone had already started selling first QONTAKT-SURVIVOR t-shirts. Carter never forgave Harris for buying one. Final scene. The unexpected visitor. Years later, Carter sat in his private quarters, finally enjoying some quiet time. His personal comm unit beeped. "Ooh," Carter sighed, pressing the screen. "What now?" A familiar face appeared. Priestess Velia. Carter blinked. "Oh no." Velia smiled. "Captain, I bring wonderful news." Carter swallowed. "I swear, if this is about another new greeting." Velia chuckled. No, this is more personal." Carter frowned. "Personal?" Velia smirked. "One of our noblewomen has expressed interest in learning more about your culture." Carter's stomach dropped. "Wait. Hold on. You mean—" Harris poked his head into the room. "Did she just say what I think she said?" Velia continued. "She has requested to visit your ship to experience human customs firsthand." Carter's soul left his body. Dr. Grant grinned. "Captain, looks like you have an alien admirer." Carter buried his face in his hands. Harris was already ordering popcorn. The screen flickered, revealing the beautiful Sci-Fi noblewoman, smiling softly. "Greetings, Captain Carter. I have been most fascinated by your species. I look forward to learning more." Carter slammed the comm unit shut. Nope. I am done." Harris burst out laughing. "Oh, this is gonna be good." Final words. And that is how Captain Ryan Carter became a galactic legend. Not for his diplomacy. Not for his battle strategies. Not even for passing impossible alien trials. But for blushing at an alien greeting. And humanity. Humanity would never let him live it down.